Rain lashed against the grimy windows of my office, mirroring the storm inside me. "Another dead end, Frankie," I muttered, staring at the crumpled photos of the victim, a socialite named Isabella Dubois. Beautiful, rich, and now, very, very dead. Strangled with a silk scarf, the kind that cost more than my monthly rent. The cops were calling it a crime of passion, a scorned lover. Bullshit. Isabella Dubois didn't do passion. She did calculated moves, power plays, and cold, hard cash. And someone had just cashed her out. My name's Frankie Fingers Falcone, and I'm a private investigator. Emphasis on the private. I wasn't exactly rolling in dough. My office was above a laundromat. The rent was perpetually overdue, and my diet consisted mostly of instant ramen and lukewarm coffee. But I had a nose for trouble, a knack for seeing the cracks in the polished facade of the rich and powerful. And Isabella Dubois's life was a goldmine of cracks. The cops had focused on her ex, a struggling artist named Julian. Easy target, heartbroken, no alibi, covered in paint, which, admittedly, could have been mistaken for blood in the dim light of the crime scene. But Julian was a puppy, a harmless, if slightly pretentious, puppy. He wouldn't hurt a fly, let alone a woman like Isabella. My gut told me to look elsewhere. Isabella was ambitious, ruthless. She'd climbed the social ladder with the grace of a ballerina and the ferocity of a wolverine. And that kind of ambition usually left a trail of enemies. I started digging. I talked to Isabella's friends, a gaggle of vapid socialites who seemed more concerned about who would inherit her designer handbag collection than the fact that she was dead. I spoke to her business rivals, each one oozing fake sympathy and barely concealed glee. They all had motives, but none of them felt right. It was like trying to nail jelly to a wall. Then there was her family. Her father, a gruff, old-money tycoon, seemed genuinely devastated. Her stepmother, however, looked like she'd just won the lottery. And her half-brother, a spoiled brat named Bartholomew, was conveniently out of town when the murder happened, claiming he was on a spiritual retreat in Bali. Yeah, right, days blurred into nights. I chased leads through the glittering mansions of the elite and the dingy back alleys of the city. I drank more coffee than was humanly possible and survived on a diet of stale donuts and sheer willpower. My apartment was a disaster, my phone bill was astronomical, and my landlady was threatening eviction. But I was close. I could feel it. I discovered Isabella had been involved in some shady business deals, skimming money from her father's company and investing it in some risky ventures. She was playing a dangerous game, and someone had decided to take her out of the game permanently. I finally found a connection, a name whispered in hushed tones, the Shadow. A shadowy figure, rumored to be involved in all sorts of illegal activities, from money laundering to art theft. No one had ever seen him, but his reputation was enough to make even the most hardened criminals tremble. I tracked down a low-level thug who'd once done business with the Shadow. He was terrified, but a few strategically placed, persuasive arguments convinced him to talk. He told me the Shadow was interested in a rare antique necklace that Isabella had recently acquired. A necklace worth millions, bingo. I had my motive. Robbery. Simple, clean, and profitable. Or so I thought. I staked out Isabella's penthouse apartment, waiting for the Shadow to make his move. After a few hours, a figure emerged from the shadows. Tall, cloaked, face hidden. He slipped into the building, silent as a ghost. I followed him, my heart pounding in my chest. This was it. I was finally going to nail the Shadow. He entered Isabella's apartment. I waited a few minutes, then kicked the door open, gun drawn. The Shadow was standing in the middle of the living room, the necklace clutched in his hand. He turned to face me, and I froze. It wasn't a man. It was a woman. Isabella's stepmother, but that wasn't the twist. As I stared at her, dumbfounded, she smiled, a cold, calculating smile that sent chills down my spine. "You were right, Frankie," she said, her voice smooth as silk. Isabella was ambitious. Just like me. She raised her hand, and I saw the silk scarf, identical to the one that had strangled Isabella. But Isabella, she continued, was also lazy. She wanted all the rewards without putting in the work. She thought she could just waltz in and take what was mine. She paused, her eyes gleaming with a manic intensity. I taught her a lesson about ambition, Frankie. A lesson about hard work. And now, I'm going to teach you one too. She lunged at me, the scarf swirling in the air. I barely had time to react. We wrestled, the scarf tightening around my throat. I gasped for air, my vision blurring. This wasn't about the necklace. It was about power. It was about ambition. And it was about the twisted logic of a woman who believed she was entitled to everything. I managed to grab her wrist, twisting it until she dropped the scarf. I stumbled back, gasping for breath, my heart pounding like a drum. She glared at me, her face contorted with rage. Then, she laughed. A chilling, hollow laugh. "You think you've won, Frankie," she said. "You think you've solved the case? You're wrong. I'm not going to jail," she pointed to the open window. "I have connections, Frankie. Powerful connections. They'll make sure I disappear. And you? You'll just be another footnote in my story." She turned and leaped out the window. I rushed to the edge, but she was gone. Vanished. Like a shadow, I stood there, staring at the empty space where she had been, the necklace lying on the floor. I had solved the case, but I hadn't caught the killer. And I knew, deep down, that she was right. She would get away with it. Because in this city, money and power trumped justice every time. I picked up the necklace, the cold metal a stark reminder of my failure. I was ambitious, sure. But maybe, just maybe, I was also a little bit lazy. Maybe that's why she got away. Maybe that's why I was still stuck in my dingy office, eating ramen and chasing shadows. As I walked out of the apartment, I looked back one last time. And then I saw it. A small, almost imperceptible detail. A single, perfectly manicured fingernail, lying on the carpet. A fingernail that didn't belong to Isabella. A fingernail that was painted a very specific shade of crimson red. A shade I recognized. A shade that belonged to Isabella's friend, Veronica, the one who had seemed the most upset by Isabella's death. The one who had inherited her designer handbag collection, and then it hit me. Isabella wasn't just ambitious. She was also incredibly generous. She'd recently updated her will, leaving everything to a newly established animal shelter. A shelter run by none other than Veronica. The twist? It wasn't about the necklace. It was about the money. And Veronica, the seemingly grieving friend, had been playing everyone for fools. Including me. And I, the ambitious but sometimes lazy detective, had almost let her get away with it.